Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Bava Basra Kuf Kaf Vav Bava Basra 126. We're going to start on the top of 126a in the top line, as the Gemara discusses the idea that a firstborn has a double portion in the property, but not in the shevach, or not in the increase in the profits of the property. The property increased before it was divided. The firstborn gets a regular portion of that, a pashat, but not a chelet bechora, not the double portion. So Amar Avhuna Marav Asi bechor shamicha. Let's say the firstborn objected. He doesn't want the orphans to improve the property, but they did it anyway. Mifa. So we're going to say that his objection is valid. If he says, "Don't improve my profits, I want it by the way right now," and nevertheless they improved it, his objection is beneficial to him, and so therefore he takes a double portion even of the shevach, because he said, "I don't want you to do that," and you did it anyway. He gets a double portion. So Amar Rabba Mistaber Taima Dravasi Ba'anavim Ubitzarum Zesim Umisakim. So he says it's logical to say that the firstborn that Rav Asi is talking about, in the case where you took grapes and you harvested them, or olives and you harvested them, that's where you should get a double portion. Meaning to say, yesterday he said, "Don't touch the grapes," and the guy harvested them anyway, so there's an improvement in them. He gets a double portion on that. Meaning to say, here the firstborn takes a double portion from the grapes now that they're harvested, and he doesn't have to say, "Oh, well, I don't get the double portion in the increase in the value of the harvested grapes," because he said, "Don't harvest it." And the guy went ahead and harvested it anyway. But if he would go ahead and crush the grapes, then we would say that he wouldn't get a double portion. If he said, "Don't crush the grapes," and the other brother crushed them, turned them into wine, then he wouldn't get a double portion, because Rashbam says, like we learned in Agozel Eitzim, that if you steal wood and you turn it into utensils, you pay like the time that it was stolen, that you've acquired it by changing it. So here too, the orphans have acquired these grapes by changing them. So therefore, by turning them into wine, the orphans have acquired it there, and so he doesn't get a double portion in the increase in the value of the wine. Rabbi Yosef Amar Afil Dracham. So even if he turned them into wine, he gets a double portion. The Gemara says, "Well, why? Initially they were grapes, and now they're wine. Why is he getting a double portion? Why is he getting a double portion in that? The other brother acquired them by changing them." So the Gemara says, "No, that's not what it means. All it means is that if he pressed them into wine and then they went down in value, that all it means is that the firstborn is not responsible for the loss." That's what it means. That's what Ukva Bar Chama said in a different state. So, where do you learn this? The Rav Ukva Bar Chama, the Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Bar. He said about what Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel said: if you have a bechor pashat, if you have a firstborn and a pashat, a regular brother, you're not buying grapes with bitzaram, grapes, and you harvested olives and you harvest them. So before the firstborn takes a double portion, and then the Gemara continues, and afilu derachim, and even if he turned them into wine. So the Gemara says, but how can you say that? The grapes were initially grapes, and now they're wine. So why would the firstborn get a double portion of them? No, he gets the value of. He's not responsible for the loss of the grapes if the other brother turned them into wine. And so we say, let's say a firstborn comes along and he takes a regular portion. He doesn't take a double portion. Viter. He's waived his rights, and therefore he loses the right to take the double portion. The Gemara says, well, what's the extent of when we say he's waived his rights? My viter. Rav Papa Amar Mishmei. The Rava Amar. Rav Papa says viter but also sadeh. No, they were dividing up a field, and the firstborn says, "I'm not taking a double portion." He just waived his rights to that field, but he didn't waive his rights to all the entire estate. He still gets a double portion of the rest of the estate. Rav Papa Mishmei. The Rava Amar viter b'kol anachasim porn. So when he waives his rights as a firstborn, he's waived them to the entire estate, not just to that field. Rav Papa Mishmei de Rava Amar Viter Ba'osasad. He just waived that field, right? The double portion. Kasavar Elo Labachor Kodem Chaluka. He says the firstborn doesn't have anything before it's divided, meaning to say he hasn't acquired anything until it's come into his possession. And so therefore he can't waive the rights to the other fields if he hasn't yet gotten them. And so therefore he hasn't waived his rights there. Whereas Rav Papi, Mishmei the Rava says, Viter B'kol Chasim Kuan, he's waived his rights to all the assets because Kasavar Yeshlo B'chor Kodem Chaluka. He's at the position that the firstborn has everything even prior to the division. It's going to be in his possession. From the fact that he waived it in one, he waived it in all of them. And the Gemara says, what's the source for the statement of Rav Papi and Rav Papa? V'hadar Rav Papi, that he waived rights to everything. Firstborn has it prior to the division. And Rav Papa says just in that field because the firstborn does not have it prior to the division. They didn't say this law explicitly. They didn't say this law explicitly. Rav, meaning they're quoting Rava. How could Rav Papa and Rav Papa say Rava saying opposite things? They didn't hear it explicitly on the Klal. Rava said a general rule, and they derived it from that general rule. That there was a firstborn, the Azil Zabin Nirse Dideu de Pasha. The firstborn went ahead. He shouldn't have done this. He acted improperly, and he sold not only his possessions, but he also sold the possessions of his brother. And then his brother died. So Azul Yasme B'nei Pasha Tomechot Amrei Mehadol Kukos. So the brothers, the deceased brothers' children went and they didn't know or didn't care that the field was sold because their father never consented, and they went to eat the dates from that the purchasers had taken, and they said, no, these are our dates. So Nachunu, the purchasers started hitting them. Amar Wahu, Krovim. So the relatives of these orphans said to the people who bought the dates, Lo Mistaya Dizabintinu Unirsayu. It's not sufficient that you bought their property when you shouldn't have, that you bought their property without their knowledge, without the knowledge of their father, because for sure this man had no authority to sell his brother's property. So it's not enough that you bought the property when you shouldn't have. But you're also striking them. So they want to know what's the story. So also coming to Rava. So then they came to Rava. And they want to know if it's a valid sale. So Rava said to them, Amar Lahu lo asav lokum. He said this firstborn was not able to sell this field at all. So lo asav lokum, he did nothing. So Mar Savar lo asa kum bepalgo, Mar Savar bekulhum. So this goes back to the debate, and this is what Rav Papa and Rav Papi heard. So remember, Rav Papa's position is that he's not able to get it prior to the division of the field. So therefore, he says in this case, lo asav lo klum. So Rav Papi says lo asav klum bepalga. So Rav Papi is saying he had rights to his property even though it wasn't divided, but he didn't have rights to his brother. So therefore, that's what he means when he says he didn't do anything. It means he wasn't able to tell his brothers. Umar Savar Bakul, whereas Rav Papa, the position of Rav Papi is that he has his portion prior to the division. And so therefore he says he didn't do anything in half, but his party was able to sold, whereas Rav Papa says Bekulu, he doesn't have it prior to the division, so therefore he didn't sell it at all. So he didn't sell anything. Shalchum mitam. So then they sent a message from Eretz Yisrael to Babel. B'chor shemachar kodem chaluka also klum. So he rules like Rav Papa. They sent a message from Eretz Yisrael like Rav Papa that if you're a firstborn and you sell it prior to the division, you've done nothing, like Rav Papa. So we see from here, Alma ein lo b'chor kodem chaluka. We see like Rav Papa. Firstborn has nothing prior to the division. But we rule like Rav Papa, firstborn already has it prior to the division. Marazutra midirishpa, palig bitzna, the pilpoi bahade achin. B'shaveh. So Marazutra midirishpana, he was the firstborn, and he divided up equally a basket filled with peppers that they inherited. And even though he was the firstborn, he only took the portion like a regular brother. Also, comment to Rav Ashi, I'm my whole vitarta b'miktas, vitarta b'konachas and kulin. So this basket of pepper is clearly no big deal vis-a-vis the whole estate. But nevertheless, Rav Ashi said, well, you waived your rights to part, you waived your rights to the whole thing. You could have $100 billion estate. And then you have a basket of peppers, and you said, okay, I'll just take my one pepper. You guys can each take one pepper. And they didn't give him, and he didn't demand a double portion there. In that context, we're going to say, since he waived his rights to part of it, he waived his rights to the whole thing. An astonishing ruling from Rav Ashi. So the Gemara now says, Omer, Ish Ploni, so says the Mishnah, if a person says, Ish Ploni b'ni b'chor, well, you told Pishnaim, a man says, listen, my firstborn will not take double, or Ishboni b'ni lo yirashim achiv, or my firstborn will not inherit with his brothers. Then under these circumstances, lo amar kum, it's not valid. He has said nothing. It's not valid. She'is now masha kasa b'Torah, because he made a condition against what's written in the Torah. The Torah says about the laws of inheritance that the firstborn gets double, and this person cannot come along and undo the words of the Torah. Now, we have to remind ourselves that we're going to have a dispute, which we already mentioned, with Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, who says that amongst all the relatives of one level, you could give it to one of them. That you're allowed to do according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, but the Chachamim argue with that. According to Chachamim, you cannot change it at all. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, you could give somebody who is in line to inherit that. You can favor him and give it to him of all the other people on the same level, like a son amongst the sons or a daughter amongst the daughters. And the first clause of our Mishnah goes even according to that position. So therefore, you can only do this, meaning say it's not arguing with Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, because when does Rabbi Yochanan do it? Meaning to say, I give it to all of them, but not to say that this one doesn't get anything. That's how Rashbam says. So that's the first clause. Hamachalak nechasav alpiv, somebody who wants to divide up his assets, and here Rashbam says we're talking about a shchivmera, somebody who's very sick, and we think he's going to die, and his words are like a kinyan, a kiksuvim v'surim dummy. His words are like they're written down, and he can give all his assets as a gift to somebody just through his speech, because we're worried he's otherwise going to get all stressed and maybe hasten his death. So therefore, if a person divides up his assets, ribo echad umiyat lechad, he gives more to one and less to the other, v'hishva lahan as habachor, and he says the firstborn gets equal to Varav Kayamin, that's going to be valid. Vim Amar Mishum Yerusha, and if he says, I want you to inherit it, Lo Amar Kun. Meaning to say, if he gives it as a gift prior to death, that's okay. But if he says it as an inheritance, then it's not valid. Kasav, Bein Betchil, Bein Be'em to Bein Besof, Mishum Matonat Dvar K'em. But if at any point he writes that this is a gift, then it's a valid statement. Leiman Masnisin to look Rabbi Yehuda. Let's say that our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda, Amar B'davar Shal Mamon to know Kaim. Well, our Mishnah says you can't make a stipulation against the law of the Torah. But Rabbi Yehuda says you could do it as it relates to money. And our Mishnah is about a monetary case. And where do we see this? Tanya Omer Isha we learned this case in Kedushin. Right? It says the person says to a woman, you're married to me, and the condition that I don't have to provide for you, food, clothing, or intimacy. We're going to say it's a valid betrothal tonight, and the condition is canceled. Meir says you can't make a condition against the Torah. Torah says that my husband has to provide food, clothing, and intimacy for his wife. And so therefore, if he says I'm married to you on the condition I don't have to give to you these items, well, guess what? The marriage is valid, and you have to give those items. No, as it relates to food and clothing, it's a valid condition. It's a valid condition because you can stipulate against the Torah as relates to money. So we see from here that Rabbi Yehuda must be arguing with our Mishnah. Gemara says, no, I feel it Rabbi Yehuda. No, you can even say our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yehuda. Hasam yada v'kamacha. In that case over there, the woman, the wife, she knows and she's allowed to waive her rights. Hacha lo kamachil. Here, the person wouldn't or couldn't, it's not 100% clear which one, waive the rights to their inheritance. And Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Ishploni B'ni Bechori. So, if the father said, Ishploni B'ni Bechori, this man is my son, is my firstborn, who notal P'ishnaim, then we trust the father and this boy gets a double portion. But if he says, Ishploni Bechorhu, if he says this person is my firstborn, is a firstborn, we don't assume that he gets a double portion because Dilma Bukhra the Ima Kamar. Maybe he's just saying he's the firstborn from the mother, but he's not my firstborn. Gemara has a case. There was a person who came in front of Rabbi Bar Bachana. Amarlei, he says, I am certain that this person is the firstborn. How do you know he's the firstborn? He says, because the father was calling him foolish firstborn, or, sometimes we'll see, we'll come back to the phrase Bechor Shota. Maybe he's the firstborn of his mother. How do you know it means he's the firstborn? Because every firstborn of the mother is called a Bechor Sikha, a foolish firstborn. Not because Rashbam says he's actually foolish, but it rather means he's not a real firstborn. Like we say in Masechah Sukkah, that we have on Sukkah, that a Hadas Shota is not kosher. It means just like a not kosher Hadas, incomplete Hadas, so to a Bechor Sikha means he's not the real firstborn. So he comes to Rabbi Chanina, he says, I know this one is the firstborn. So Rabbi Chanina said, how do you know? Because when people used to come to their father and they had some eye condition, he would say, go to my son Shechachas, he's a firstborn, umasi ruke, and he's going to take his saliva and use it as a medicinal ointment. So the Gemara says, "V'dilma buchor deimos," but that doesn't mean he's a firstborn. He could be the firstborn from his mother. He says, "No, gemiri buchor da'aba masi ruke buchor deimo masi ruke." He says, "No, we have a tradition that the firstborn from the father, his saliva works as medicine for the eye, but not the firstborn of the mother. So therefore, he's obviously a firstborn." Amar Rabbi Ami tumtum shenikra v'nimtza zachar. A tumtum is somebody whose genitalia is covered up. We don't know if he's a male or a female. So let's say he was raised and then his membrane was torn and they discovered that he is in fact a male. He does not get double portion. Why? The Amar Krav, Ben Abachor was Niyah, says that the firstborn, even of the hated woman, gets a double portion, but it means Vahaya. Ben Mishas Havaya. He has to have been a boy from the beginning, not somebody who became a boy. If he became a boy, then he does not get a double portion. Nachman Yitzchak Amar Af Eno Nidon to Ben Tzora Mora. He's also not judged like a rebellious child. Is a very important halacha. Amar Kra Kiela Ish Ben Tzora Mora Achia Ben Mishas Havaya. Until he'll be a boy from the moment that he is that from the moment of his existence. He has to have been a child of a son from the start. So we'll stop here. This is the conclusion, but of today's daf. But we can go on a little bit for tomorrow's daf.